Ever find yourself wondering, like, how digital evidence actually gets pieced together? Like, what if a whole court case hinged on, I don't know, the amount of data a chip should hold?
Oh, yeah. Gets pretty interesting. You'd be surprised how often something like that pops up.
Well, get this. Today's deep dive centers around a discrepancy that highlights exactly that. We're talking Micron memory chips and a potential misinterpretation with, get this, huge implications.
Yeah, this one's a doozy. Really shows how crucial accuracy is, especially when you're dealing with legal stuff.
Absolutely. So we've got our hands on this legal document, right? It's basically an expert's analysis of some data storage components. In plain English, think tech experts' notes on specifically Micron memory chips that were like taken from a vehicle for a case.
Right, so they're trying to figure out what happened, and these chips, they hold clues,
Hmm.
digital breadcrumbs, you could say.
Exactly. And this expert, Mr. Burgess, he found something really interesting. See, there's this one chip should hold 4 GB of data, but they only pulled 540.
Megabytes.
That's like a huge red flag. So now everyone's thinking, is there more data hidden somewhere or is something else going on? What do you think?
Well, this is where it gets a bit, shall we say, technical. See, the heart of this discrepancy, it boils down to those tricky little things we call gigabits and gigabytes. Easy to confuse, but a world of difference.
Okay, so break it down for us. What's the difference and why does it matter so much in this case?
All right, imagine this. You're building something, right? Bits, they're like the individual building blocks.
Yeah.
Bytes, on the other hand, those are like your buckets for carrying a bunch of blocks at once. And it just so happens that one byte, it holds 8 bits.
Okay, so if bits are the tiny pieces and bytes are like groups of those pieces.
Exactly. So when you see 4 GB, you might think 4 gigabytes, but hold on. It actually translates to 512 megabytes. That's way less storage.
Uh-huh. So going back to that first chip,
It actually did exactly what it was supposed to. The 2 GB they found, that's pretty much spot on for a 4G-bit chip. The mix-up wasn't with the chip itself, but with how they interpreted those units, those bits and bytes. And in this case, that kind of difference, that discrepancy has huge implications. It could be the difference between, you know, proving someone was trying to hide data on purpose or just a technical misunderstanding. It's a really big deal.
huge, yeah, yeah. So, okay, I will fully admit I dove into like the nitty-gritty of these Micron product specs, and let me tell you, I had to take a couple headache tablets because they have this thing. It's called a part number description table. It's essentially like a decoder ring, right?
Right.
For all the cryptic codes they use to label all these different chip configurations, and it's a lot.
Oh yeah, these tables are essential for anyone who's working with this kind of technology at any level. They're like the Rosetta Stone for understanding like the specific features of each chip. You have to have these.
Yeah, and according to this table, which is, about as official as it gets, a 4G designation, very clearly, definitively points to a 4 gigabit chip, not 4 gigabytes.
Which, I mean, it makes you wonder, right?
Right.
Like where did this difference come from?
Mhm.
Was it just an honest mistake? Maybe somebody who wasn't familiar enough with these, really detailed specs?
Yeah.
Or could it be something more intentional, more deliberate?
Right.
And that's where things start to get really interesting because the expert witness in this case is suggesting something honestly kind of bold.
Okay, so
Ugh.
so what is this expert suggesting? Like, are we about to go like full CSI on these chips?
Well, I mean, not quite CSI, but pretty close. What they're recommending is actually physically examining the chips,
Wow.
the ones that were removed from the devices.
Okay, so hold on. We're not just like, pulling up specs on a website anymore. This is like we're digging into the actual hardware.
Exactly. And remember those cryptic codes we were talking about? Those are usually physically printed on the chip too.
Right.
So by examining them directly, we can confirm, like, do these physical chips actually match what the documentation says? Of course, we have to acknowledge this kind of analysis it's incredibly delicate.
Yeah.
We were talking about, microscopic circuitry here, and one wrong move could damage the evidence.
Yeah, you're not kidding. So it's like a high stakes gamble basically, but potentially a game changer if it reveals something really groundbreaking.
Absolutely, yeah. I think um, what's really interesting about this case is it brings up this whole issue of like how important it is to be super precise, especially when you're talking about, tech stuff and legal documents.
Right, because it's not just about like how much stuff you can store on it.
Exactly.
It could be worth way more.
Exactly.
So, I mean, what's the deal here? You think someone just like
Yeah.
butterfingers on the keyboard?
It's possible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, typos happen,
Yeah.
but you'd think something this important, like a legal document, would be like checked really carefully.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it gets a little strange.
Right. Yeah.
It makes you wonder, like, what if someone just totally misread the specs? Like, maybe there was some miscommunication, between the lawyers and the tech people.
Right.
And then that little mistake, it just, like, blew up into this whole thing.
So it's less about like who messed up and more about like
Exactly.
how did this happen?
Right.
Because if it happened here, it could happen anywhere, right?
Absolutely. And that's, I think, why this matters to everyone. Because this isn't just like a tech hiccup.
No.
This could actually impact the outcome of this whole thing.
It really could. You're talking about potentially impacting someone's life here.
Exactly.
Think about it. This discrepancy could raise serious doubts about what this expert is saying.
It's about their credibility.
Exactly. If they're misinterpreting something as basic as bits and bytes, it really makes you question their understanding of this technology.
And if their understanding is that flawed,
Right.
then the court might start to question other parts of their testimony too. Talking about, like, people being harmed by this, right?
Exactly. There's potential real-world impact.
Right. Talk about feeling cheated.
Absolutely. And legally speaking,
Yeah.
proving those discrepancies were, like, deliberate. That's huge. And the legal stakes,
Yeah.
those just ratchet up the pressure.
Right.
Because you got to get those digital details exactly right,
Totally.
especially in court.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Any little doubt about the process
Yeah.
could tank the whole case. But this case shows that those ones and zeros,
Yeah.
they have real-world weight.
True.
Like, confusing gigabits and gigabytes seems small, but it can have huge consequences.
Wow, that's a good point. It's like the smaller the thing, the bigger the deal it is in this case.
Almost, yeah. And,
Right.
as we use more and more digital stuff, these cases, they're going to keep coming up.
Because it's not like, just about catching some bad guy anymore.
It's bigger than that, for sure.
It's about making sure that all this evidence, this digital stuff,
Right.
that it actually, like, means something in court.
Exactly. It's about getting it right.
Right.
Being transparent, really understanding the tech.
Right.
Because if we don't,
Yeah.
that's a slippery slope.
Which brings us back to, like, this whole case, it makes you wonder, like, what kind of data are we even talking about?
That is the question, isn't it?
Right.
And unfortunately,
Yeah.
our document, it doesn't say.
The worst.
But, it does say data acquisition issues.
Okay.
So that implies that whatever was on those chips,
Yeah.
someone thought it was important.
We're wrapping up this deep dive here. What's the, like, one big thing you want our listener to remember?
I think it's awareness.
Okay.
We live these digital lives, and even the little things,
Yeah.
they can blow up.
Right.
And understanding the tech, even just a little,
Right.
it makes all the difference.
Like they say, knowledge is power.
Exactly. The more you know,
Right.
the better you are at dealing with all this stuff.
So next time you hear gigabytes, gigabits,
Aldar.
don't just tune it out, right?
Don't.
Take a minute, think about it, maybe Google it.
Google's your friend.
Right. Because you never know
Never know.
when it might be important.
Exactly.
Maybe even in court someday.
Hopefully not, but you never know.
Right. But until then,
Yeah.
stay informed, be curious.
Curiosity is key.
And remember, in the digital world,
It's all about the details.
every bit counts.